Hello and welcome to the F1 Time Portal, a Formula One history podcast started by two Formula One super nerds. I'm your super nerd host, Rosa.
And I'm your colour host, Luigi. And today we're taking you back to the remainder of the 1960 season, well, part 2. Let's go. So, Rosa, we're up to race 3, the Dutch Grand Prix. So this is on the 6th of June. It's at Zandvoort. 75 laps, and there are 17 drivers in the race, but 4 are withdrawn, which I think we'll deal with in the actual commentary.
Okay.
Grid formation is 3x2x3. So after what was a fairly hectic high retirement Monaco race that you heard in last week's episode, we had the Dutch Grand Prix only 1 week later. The first thing to note is we welcome the debut of a special driver, Jim Clark, in the Lotus Climax. He was actually taking the place of Surtees, who was actually away at the Isle of Man TT. So that's a racing event, I believe.
I think that's a motorcycle racing event.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Ferrari utilised the services of Ginther as a substitute for the injured Allison, and Aston Martin turned up with a new and lighter car for Salvadori and Alonso to drive.
What was interesting about this race is
Did you hear what I said? I said Alonso.
Did you say what? I didn't hear you say Alonso.
I said Salvadori and Alonso because it makes sense. Alonso made his day. He drove in 60 and is driving in 2024. Why not? There was no Alonso. It was just Salvadori.
It was just Salvadori.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to mention something about Alonso that happened today, but I don't think I will. I might spoil it for some people.
Oh, okay. 70 years oil. Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently in this race, the organisers only wanted 15 cars to start the race. So eventually it was agreed that the original starters would be increased from 15 to 20, but no starting money would be paid to the extra 5.
That's so funny. If Ferrari was in that bottom 5, they just pack up their cars and go, they just go home. Okay, this is not for us. Yeah. So that's big incentive, right? To be in the top 15. So, yeah. So to qualifying, and Brabham and Moss basically set a blistering pace, with Moss in the Lotus coming out on top with 1 minute 33.2, followed by Brabham in the Cooper, and then Ireland in the Lotus in third. The second row was taken up by the 2 BRMs of Bonnier, then Graham Hill. The Ferraris, maybe they had a slight concern about that top 15.
Yeah.
They were having a tough time of it, with Ginther in 12th, Phil Hill in 13th, and Von Trips right on the edge in 15th.
Wow, they only scraped it in. They were not good under the pressure.
He would not have liked not getting the money. He would not have liked it whatsoever.
But I'm not sure we're going to see Ferrari winning here, Luigi.
It's not looking good, is it?
No.
At least one thing that Ferrari is good at is when they win well, and when they lose well.
Yeah, there's no in between.
No.
They do both things very well.
Yeah. So after practice had finished, there was more administrative drama with some timekeeping errors and the question of starting money coming up again.
Oh gosh.
So in the end, Aston Martin and Scarabs, that's not a slur that we're not trying to call a team Scabs or something.
No, that's an actual team, isn't it?
Yeah, it's called Scarabs, yeah. They were withdrawn, obviously because of they didn't feel like it was worth it with a lack of money, while the Centro Sud team only entered 1 car because they didn't want to risk more due to a lack of starting money.
What a crazy, shambolic, flip-flopping start of the race. This is just crazy.
They've made drama for no reason, really.
I know. Like I said, it's like they're making up the rules as they go along for each race.
And didn't they see the last Monaco race and only 4 cars were driving at the end? You know, it's not like they had a problem. Like they could have comfortably been, they could have said, we're going to have no more than 5 finishes or 6 finishes if we're lucky, you know?
And what is it about a starting money for 5 cars? I mean, surely the governing body could afford it. I mean, we've been hearing about massive crowds.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know. It's just
maybe
strange.
the massive crowd's not at every race, you know?
Maybe.
Mm.
Yeah.
There's no Dutch drivers as far as I know. Max Verstappen, his father, Jos, doesn't make his debut for like another 50 or 60 years. So as the flag fell on race day, there were no nonsense starts, and Brabham edged into the lead ahead of Moss, Ireland, Stacey, and the rest. So immediately Brabham in his Cooper and Moss in his Lotus pull away from the rest, and by lap 10, they were already 17 seconds ahead of Ireland and Stacey, who were themselves having a titanic battle, passing and repassing one another.
There's always a couple of drivers who, are a bit ahead of the rest of the paddock, isn't there?
Yeah.
And this time it's Moss and Brabham.
Yeah.
In those cars. Yeah.
Different teams really makes it exciting, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's unusual when you get that combination coming together and being so well matched.
Yes.
Yeah. So McLaren retired on lap 9, which he's in the Cooper, which enabled Gurney to come up into 5th place. Now I'm just trying to double check who Gurney is driving for.
BRM? I think it's BRM.
Oh, that doesn't help when he doesn't get a point. Then I don't see him on the table. Maybe you can double check that for me, Rosa.
It is. It's BRM.
It's BRM. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't get very far in this season. Okay. Oh, okay. I see. I see what happens. Okay. So, which enabled Gurney to move up into 5th place because of McLaren's retirement. However, we face another tragedy, unfortunately. Approaching the Tarzan hairpin, the rear brakes on Gurney's BRM failed, and he shot straight off the circuit. While Gurney escaped with minor injuries, unfortunately, a spectator was killed and others were injured. There was little information about this accident, and of course, the race continued.
Well, I have tried to do a little bit more research on this incident, and the only thing that I could, and look, I don't really know whether this is legitimately the case, but there are some reports that say that the spectator was in a prohibited area. So, I mean, it was probably easier to get around the track though in those days. Like there was hardly any security or safety measures. So,
yeah,
I guess you just wanted to see the race up close back then. I mean, people just stood near the track anyway. So, yeah, but I did read that the spectator was in a prohibited area.
Okay. I mean, that doesn't justify anything.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
So it's still a tragedy, and it's sad that the race was not stopped at all.
No, I know.
Yeah. So as the race continued, Brabham and Moss remained close. But then on lap 17, the Cooper, which is Brabham's car, dislodged part of a concrete marker tile, which was on the edge of the track, which smashed into Moss's front wheel and burst his tyre.
What? Is that like the drain cover? What is a concrete marker tile? And how did it fly up? And, of course, it had to burst Moss's front tyre.
Of course, yeah. It's a special Moss branded concrete marker. And concrete marker tile, that's got to be strong and heavy. That would have been pretty dangerous. What if that hit the driver in the head or something? Hit Moss in the head, So maybe he's lucky. Maybe this is a lucky thing that it just burst his tyre and nothing more.
Well, yes, I guess.
Still, it's crazy, right?
Yes.
So Moss managed to hobble back to the pits and lost 2 laps as he had to wait for his wheel hub to be dismantled and a new wheel fitted. So he rejoined in 12th place.
Yep. I can't. That is just so random. That is such a random act that I just can't believe that happened. Okay.
Yeah. So with Moss gone, in the words of Mike Lang, Brabham could relax, and we've jokingly said relax, meaning driving in a little coffin car at 200 or 300 kilometres an hour, as I'm sure he wasn't just cruising,
with no helmet.
Yeah. He would have had a helmet at this stage. So yeah, we do have to do a podcast on helmets.
We do have to do a safety one. Yes.
Yeah. So as Ireland and Stacey were nearly 30 seconds back and 2nd and 3rd behind Brabham. So behind the ongoing duel between these two, the guys in 2nd and 3rd, a further 30 seconds back was another duel between Graham Hill and a certain Jim Clark in 4th place. This is his debut race, remember? So It's a great showing by him as he'd qualified 11th and he was already up to 4th place with not a huge amount of retirements.
No.
Yeah. So unfortunately for Clark, his race actually ended on lap 43 with transmission problems, but he had made a statement to all that he had arrived. Now only 4 drivers were on the same lap as the leader. Meanwhile, Moss was having a massive comeback drive, and was already back up to 6th place. Remember, did he lose 2 laps? I think he lost 2 laps, yeah.
Yes, he did.
And he was closing up rapidly on Von Tripp's Ferrari. Then Stacey retired with transmission problems on lap 58, which means Moss, who had recently just passed Von Tripp's, was now up to 4th place. And he was actually just under 50 seconds behind Graham Hill in 3rd. So he was not far off considering what he'd been through. So Moss was not done. Not only was he catching Graham Hill by about 3 seconds per lap, he even unlapped himself from Brabham.
Wow. So if it hadn't been for that concrete tile, whatever that is, he would have been leading for sure.
Oh, I think for sure. He was really in his zone, wasn't he?
Yep.
So at the start of the last lap, Moss was only 3.9 seconds behind Graham Hill. So talk about catching up. And he only narrowly missed out on 3rd place by a mere 1.1 seconds. So phenomenal drive. This comeback drive significantly overshadowed the fact that Brabham had led this race from start to finish and that Ireland had actually come second. So we've got Brabham, Ireland and Graham Hill 1, 2, 3. Moss 4th, just missing out. And then Von Tripp's 5th in the Ferrari and 6th was Ginther in the Ferrari and the rest. So I think Ferrari got some starting money. Or is it starting money for where you finish? Just where you qualify?
No, I think it was where you qualified.
Okay. So Ferrari still got their money, but then got some points.
And they got some points, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so the Drivers' Championship then stands at Bruce McLaren still in the lead on 14, but Sterling Moss catching up now on 11, and Jack Brabham is on 8. And in the Constructors' Championship, we've got Cooper Climax on 22, the Lotus Climax on 15, and Ferrari on 12.
Okay. Not too far behind, considering they haven't been in this championship, but they're sort of only 10 points behind the championship constructor.
Yeah.
So up to race 4, this is the Belgian Grand Prix. This race was on the 19th of June at Spa. 36 laps and 17 drivers were in the race with 2 non-starters, and the grid formation was a 3x2x3. And this is the opening of the 1960 Belgian Grand Prix by Mike Lang. So we only read these bits out when we think it's warranted. And what he writes is pretty heavy. So these are his words. In many ways, the least said about this race, the better, for it developed into one of the most tragic Grand Prix ever. Now, I thought the 1958 season was horrific.
Yeah.
So when I read this at the start of 1960, I thought, oh boy.
You had to brace yourself.
Yeah. So let's see what pans out from this. So to start with, to show the acceleration of Formula One, the pole position time set by Brabham in this race, 3 minutes 50, was over 7.1 seconds ahead of Mike Hawthorne's pole in 1958.
Wow. That's only 2 years ago.
Big improvement, right? Big speed improvement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we said these cars with the rear engines are just so fast and so light. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that time's tumbled.
Yeah. Of interest was that Gurney was driving with his... I'm laughing because what I'm about to say is pretty funny. He was driving with his forearm in a plaster because of the cracked bones he sustained in his Zandvoort crash.
What?
Yeah.
One, they had a plaster. I guess that's how you healed bones, or that's how you still do heal bones, some bones. And what, did any of the drivers sign his cast? Like, was it a thing?
They probably did. That would be worth a fortune.
It would.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, just to allow him to drive with a cast on his arm.
And these cars were physical.
Yeah.
No power steering.
Yeah.
Gee, these were pretty tough people.
Okay. Interesting to see how he does. Let's keep going.
So the thing is, even with his arm in plaster, he actually did a pretty half decent time. But while he was towards the back of the field, he actually outqualified many a non-plaster driver. So the troubles of this race started on Saturday practice. So Moss had a crash and a wheel had come off, sending the Lotus into a very aggressive spin. Moss was thrown out and sustained very serious leg, nose, and back injuries.
Oh, not to Moss. This was going to be his season. He was up there. He was in the running.
Yeah.
Man.
Poor guy. Almost at the same time, Taylor in the Lotus had his steering column break and his car shot off the circuit into the trees. While he was lucky not to be killed, he suffered a broken collarbone and other injuries.
God.
Yeah. So when qualifying restarted, there was a lackluster mood among the drivers, but qualifying was sorted with Brabham Cooper on pole, followed by Brooks in the Cooper and Phil Hill in the Ferrari getting into the front row. On race day itself, Brabham shot into the lead with, I'm going to struggle with his name.
I would say Genderbine.
Genderbine. Okay.
Yep.
With Genderbine Cooper charging up to second place basically from fourth on the grid on the second row. So not a bad effort for him. The cars stayed tight, and after the first lap, the 17 driving cars were virtually nose to tail. So pretty exciting, this race so far. Even after 2 laps, the first 7 cars were still almost touching, so no one could break away. The order was Brabham, Ireland in the Lotus, doing a great job in second place, having qualified 7th. Phil Hill was 3rd, Bonnier 4th, Genderbine 5th, Graham Hill, and then McLaren. By lap 4, Phil Hill moved up to second place, and both Brabham and Phil Hill started to leave the rest behind. So now we started to have a bit of a breakaway. It took 4 laps though. Then Brabham pushed, and he was now 6 seconds ahead after 10 laps. A series of retirements took place, including Ireland and Bonnier. So by half distance, Brabham was still leading ahead of Phil Hill. Further back, the battle for third was ferocious as ever between Graham Hill, Genderbine, and McLaren. So it's good to see that Ferrari up there with Phil Hill, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is interesting, yes.
Yeah. However, it was a battle for 6th place that this race is best remembered. Maurice, is that how you pronounce it? Maurice?
Yeah, I would say Mairese, but
Mairese,
yes.
Yeah, it sounds like an Italian name.
Mairese
in the Ferrari and Bristow in the Cooper were really hounding one another. And as the two completed their 19th lap, Bristow found himself on the wrong racing line and tried to correct. In doing this correction, he lost control and shot off the circuit. Unfortunately, he was thrown out onto the road and killed instantly. On only 5 laps later, Stacey in the Lotus also lost control of his Lotus, and he hit some banking on the side of the track. The car overturned and caught fire. Stacey was also thrown out and killed instantly, just 5 laps later.
Oh my gosh, what a terrible race.
Yeah.
What do you know what had caused the Stacey accident? He just hit some banking.
Well, it was thought that Stacey was hit in the face by a bird, apparently, which may have caused the accident.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So we'll talk a bit more about these drivers at the end, because we like to give credit for the drivers that have made the ultimate sacrifice, but a pretty horrific sort of series of events here. So the tragic race continued. Of course, it didn't stop, where Phil Hill had to stop and repair a fuel leak, so Graham Hill moved up to second place. Then on lap 35... and remember, this is a 36-lap race, Graham Hill's BRM engine blew up. He coasted into the pits and passed the finish line. It was later said that if he had stopped before the finish line, he would have been classified as a lap down and potentially been recognised as third. Instead, the record books note down that he retired on lap 36.
Oh, no.
I don't get it.
Well, because he didn't pass the finish line, because the pits were before the finish line.
Oh, I see. Because it says so the finish line must have been after the pit stop position.
Yes.
Yeah, something like that. If he stayed on the track and just rolled, he would have got third.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. It reminds me of that Schumacher one where he did his...
Yeah, he won the race in the pits.
He won the race in the pits because he's crossed the finish line.
While taking his penalty.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a very questionable victory.
Yes.
Very questionable.
Yes.
But good on him for being creative and finding a solution.
Yeah.
So getting the win despite the punishment that he had to serve.
Yes.
So Genderbine had problems, but he earned third place, being a lap down. So the final results was that Brabham won the race. A surprise McLaren came second. We didn't mention him much because he was surprised himself to be up in second place. Genderbine came third, Phil Hill fourth, and Jim Clark fifth. So not a bad result for Jim Clark as well, despite a sad race.
Yeah, so Chris Bristow, he was only 22 when he died. So he was a British driver, and apparently he had the nickname the Wild Man of British Club Racing. And basically because he had a lot of collisions almost at every track that he raced at. There was a bit of a wild man in the car. He only participated in 4 Formula One races.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of detail about his death, which we will carefully navigate. But yeah, when he went off the track, he was held into barbed wire.
Yeah.
Which did terrible things to him. I don't know that I want to say the next words, Luigi, but
no,
it was horrific injuries.
But what I think it is worth mentioning is, while he got some horrific injuries, the crash occurred during the race, as we know, and his body was on the side of the track, and it stayed there for the rest of the race.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. That's pretty disgusting, isn't it?
It is. That is terrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Bristow and Stacey's passing caused many drivers, including Jim Clark, to have a really strong dislike of the Belgian Grand Prix. I mean, that's an iconic track, Spa. I mean, I think it's been there since the beginning of the World Champion, or what we understand to be the Formula One World Championship.
Yeah.
So, with the BRM boss calling him a future world champion and an early Schumacher of his day. So that, people saw Bristow with having huge potential.
Yeah. Not everyone felt that though.
No, Moss didn't think that, at all. So,
he only had 4 races. How could he show?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really, well, from what we've read, we didn't really see, but it's really hard to tell what a driver's potential was by reading about races. So, and Alan Stacey was 26.
Wow, he was also very young.
Yes.
So of interest about Stacey was that he was actually an amputee, and he actually raced with an artificial lower right leg due to motorcycle accident when he was 17. So good on him for persevering with his career.
Amazing. Yes.
Yeah. And again, more detail, but not for gore's sake, but to again paint the picture of the dangers of this time. It was quoted by Stacey's friend Ireland that some spectators claimed that a bird had potentially knocked him unconscious or potentially broken his neck before the car actually crashed. So gee, that's such a random event, right?
Yeah.
So, and he also participated in just 7 races.
Gosh. I guess, and we're seeing a lot more younger people dying now because I guess the age, back in the 50s, they were 48-year-olds and 40-year-olds that were racing.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing a lot younger drivers come into the sport. That's very sad.
It is sad. So let's put an end to this race.
Yes, okay. So at the end of this race, the Drivers' Championship has Bruce McLaren leading on 20 points, Jack Brabham second on 16, and Sterling Moss third on 11. And in the Constructors' Championship, we have Cooper Climax on 30 points, Lotus Climax on 17 points, and Ferrari on 15 points.
Okay, so Bruce McLaren taking the lead. And I'm sure Jack Brabham, they're both in the Cooper Climax team, Bruce McLaren and Jack Brabham.
Yes, they're teammates, yeah.
And you'd have thought that Jack Brabham would have been the number 1 driver, having won the 59 championship, but Bruce is shaking it up a little bit.
He is, yeah. Not much you can do when you're not even in the running.
Yeah. So up to race 5, the French Grand Prix. This is the 5th race of 9. So this race is being held on the 3rd of July. It's at Reims. It's a 50-lap race with 20 drivers participating and 3 drivers as non-starters. and the grid formation is 3x2x3. So the mood at the French Grand Prix was subdued because of the tragedies at the Belgian Grand Prix. They were still very raw and having only taken place just 2 weeks prior. And we've also got Moss missing as well, remember? And the other driver who also got injured. So I'm not sure I can't remember the other driver if he drove. Throughout practice, Brabham dominated and his pole position was never in doubt.
Yeah, well, like you say, I think if Moss was there, he would have pushed him a bit more and challenged him for that pole position.
I think so, because it's been like that all season. So it was the two hills that gave Brabham the biggest challenge, but a long way off, as Brabham got pole with 2 minutes 16.8. Phil Hill in the Ferrari was second, 2 minutes 18.2, and Graham Hill in the BRM was 2 minutes 18.4. So he was pretty big.
Not so much of a challenge, was it?
No.
But we've got 3 different marks on the front row and no Lotus.
And obviously Moss was driving that Lotus. So, So get ready for another shambles, as Mike Lang, the author, put it. So again, I'm resorting to a quote from Mike Lang's book. The start of the race on Sunday was a shambles, for unknown to the starter, Graham Hill was having trouble getting his BRM into gear. So back to me. The consequence of this was that 3 cars came into contact with Graham Hill's BRM, while Trintignant rushed through a haze of rubber, smoke, and rammed right into the BRM, and both cars obviously retired immediately with the damage. For the next 2 laps, the entire field appeared as a blur, with gaps appearing between the cars on the 3rd lap only. So it took a while for them to start pacing a little bit.
So it would be so amazing to see the cars racing so close together live. I mean, the lack of aero really made it able to have close racing.
Yeah.
These days we don't get that as much, do we?
Not really.
The cars have a real trouble being that close to one another.
Yeah, despite the authorities trying to make the rules, but it's just not. It's not. The cars develop out of it.
Yeah.
It's a race, and the teams are beating the regulators essentially.
Yeah, like it would have been so amazing to see the cars racing so close together. Like just the danger of that is just amazing to see.
Yeah. So Brabham was holding on to a very slight lead, with the Ferraris of Phil Hill and Von Trips following right behind. So the Ferraris are up there. Lap 4, Phil Hill took the lead, and then 1 lap later, Brabham passed back again. And this continued lap after lap after lap.
So again, we hardly see this type of overtaking now in today's F1. Again, because of the era that we're in with aero and downforce and all of that sort of stuff. And it is amazing that even after what happened at the Belgium race, that these drivers can still race so close and take these chances. I mean, that just talks about how talented and daring and brave they are.
Yeah, the consequences of a touch.
Yeah.
Dramatic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what is even more amazing is that further back, there were similar tight duels taking place, with Ireland and Bonnier having their battle for 4th and 5th, and a little back from them was Gendebine. Did I say it right?
Yeah, I'd say that.
And McLaren for 6th and 7th. So lots of little duels happening all the way through.
Battles everywhere, I know.
Yeah. So it was only at half distance that the intensity of these battles started to ease. I wonder if the drivers just got exhausted, just battling and
concentration, yeah.
By lap 20, Brabham was starting to consistently hold the lead versus the 2 chasing Ferraris. These 3 leading cars were now about a minute ahead of Gendebine, Ireland and McLaren. By lap 25, Brabham had finally started to pull away and now enjoyed a 5-second lead ahead of the 2 Ferraris. By this stage, the Ferrari gremlins struck. They shouldn't be called gremlins. Those gremlins are reserved for Moss.
Yeah, they're not actual gremlins.
Yeah. I don't know. We need to have another word for things like this. That's not for Moss. Has to be another term, because only Moss gets gremlins.
Yes.
Yeah. At this stage, the Ferrari trouble struck. Both Phil Hill and Von Trips retired due to car issues. This left Brabham over 1.5 minutes ahead of the rest. So Ireland at this stage passed Gendebine for 2nd place, and things really heated up.
Yeah, well, remember, when you're second in this era, it could very easily be the lead because there was just super high retirements happening all the time. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, so second place is awesome, right?
Yeah.
And it's even more awesome if you're alive. So, yeah. So Ireland had car troubles, though, and he dropped out, unfortunately. However, Genderbind was now having a huge battle with Bruce McLaren, who also wanted to win this race by getting into second place. That's a joke, right? Because McLaren has been a little bit lucky this year. And at this stage, they were 1.5 minutes behind Brabham, by the way.
Okay.
So both the two drivers passed each other continuously, and they repassed each other again. This is Genderbind and Bruce McLaren. Only on the penultimate lap was the matter resolved, with McLaren braking too late on a corner and taking to the escape road. Genderbind can finally finish the race in second place. And dare I say, relax. Third was McLaren, followed by the rest.
Right. Well, that is close. I wonder if he hadn't pushed so hard on that corner, whether he'd been able to catch him, but we will never know. We will never know.
Yeah.
So, as a result of that, though, Brabham and McLaren are now equal first on 24 points.
Wow, so McLaren would have been leading still if he'd come second instead of
yes.
So that cost him.
That cost him because Brabham won. So, and Moss, well, he's on 11, not racing. And then on the constructors' standings, we have Cooper Climax on 38, pulling away from Lotus Climax on 19, and Ferrari is still third on 15.
Okay, and the Ferraris are showing good form lately, aren't they?
Yeah. Enzo must be like, every time that rear-engine car does well, he's like, oh, damn it.
Yeah.
But he's got to like grudgingly give it its due props.
Yeah. So we're up to the 6th Grand Prix of the season, the British Grand Prix. I've always found the British and the Italian Grand Prix generally the most entertaining. Have you felt that?
Yeah, I think so.
So this race is on the 16th of July. It's at Silverstone, 77-lap race, 24 drivers entering the race, and it's a 4x3x4 grid formation. So on Thursday, rain curtailed the practice session. So as such, the only real practice that took place was on Friday, and it was a very frantic 1.5 hours, which would pretty much determine the grid for the British Grand Prix. Brabham continued his fine qualifying form by taking pole with 1 minute 34.6, which was actually a whole second faster than Graham Hill's BRM in second. Third was Bruce McLaren in the Cooper, and then Bonnier. Despite really strong efforts, the Ferraris of Phil Hill and Von Trips could only get 10th and 7th fastest.
It just seems weird not to hear Moss up there. He always did really well at his home Grand Prix.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, actually, Moss was there, but he was still recovering from his accident. So he actually dropped the flag for the 24 race starters.
Okay, so he would have got it right.
Yeah, he wouldn't have made a shambles, right?
Yeah.
No. And he doesn't. He doesn't. Although I'm surprised the flag didn't break down on him.
Yeah.
So 21 drivers took off with Graham Hill, Brooks and Taylor all stalling on the grid.
Oh, gosh.
That's got to be called a nonsense.
Yeah, that's a nonsense trio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why didn't Mike Lang call that out? We have to do it. What's going on, Mike Lang? I wonder if it's because Graham Hill's British and he really doesn't like giving. Oh, no, he
started it for Hawthorn.
Yeah, maybe he had something against Hawthorn.
Yeah.
And he loved Graham Hill.
I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So the grid streamed past this trio. While McLaren had beaten Brabham to lead at the start, when it came to the end of the first lap, Brabham was back in front. Let's not forget that both Brabham and McLaren are in the same Cooper team. So then there was Bonnier, Ireland and Von Trips, and Graham Hill was down in 22nd place. So Graham Hill was making relentless progress, and after only 10 laps, he had passed 5 cars to move up into 7th place.
Wow. That's pretty good for, I'm not going to be highly critical here, but, Graham Hill's been racing a while, hasn't he? He's been on the grid a while, 3 years maybe, 4 maybe.
Yeah.
And we haven't really heard him do much, but man, he's having a year and a half here.
He's stepping up, isn't he?
Yeah.
So meanwhile, up front, Brabham had opened up a small lead over Ireland, who had since moved up to second place, followed by Surtees, McLaren and Bonnier. Graham Hill continued his charge through the pack. He passed Bonnier, then McLaren, and now had his sights set on Surtees. By lap 30, Graham Hill was jostling with the two Lotuses of Clark and Surtees and finally reached third place. Third place.
Wow.
Even then, Graham Hill kept pushing, and at half distance, he passed Ireland for second.
This is the greatest charge in Formula One history so far.
I know, it's amazing. And on his home track in a British car.
Yeah, well, that might have been why he had so much fire in him.
Yeah. He may have been really angry what caused that stall. Who knows? He was furious. He was taking it out on the world.
Yeah.
So it's not over yet, Rosa, because Graham Hill started chasing down Brabham.
Oh, gosh.
And on lap 52 out of 77, he was actually right behind Brabham in the Cooper.
Wow.
That's phenomenal.
Yes, that is amazing.
Lap 53, under braking at Stowe, Hill made his move, but had to fall back in place as Brabham had a better line. For the next 2 laps, the pair were nose to tail, and finally on lap 55, Graham Hill had the lead of the race.
Wow. Well, I guess that makes up for his part of a nonsense trio. That is an amazing comeback.
I wonder if that's why Mike Lang didn't call it a nonsense. Because he knew what was coming, and he didn't want to look like a nonsense author.
Yes.
But we didn't mind calling it nonsense.
Nah, we call it like it is on this podcast.
Correct. Yeah, we don't have any pride as to how we appear. So there was more action further back with jostling between Surtees, Clark, and Ireland. But on lap 58, Clark had to stop for temporary repairs to a broken front suspension.
Okay. What is a temporary repair to suspension?
Yeah.
Like generally, suspension is terminal, isn't it? Like, what are they going to do? Put like a rubber band on it?
You know what? I'm going to say that this is a Lotus thing. Okay. Lotus has found a way to temporarily repair a suspension.
Okay, that makes more sense now. I get it.
Yeah, it's Lotus.
Yeah.
So at the front, it's weird to say this, Graham Hill was still in the lead, but he was actually not able to shake off Brabham. So it's tough.
Does the Aussie have something left in him?
Yeah, so going into lap 72, remember 77 lap race, going into the Cops, I think it's hairpin, isn't it? Cops hairpin?
Yes.
And while trying to lap the Ferraris for the second time.
The second time? Luigi, you don't have to rub it in.
Yeah, I could have just said lap the Ferraris.
Yes, you could have just said lap the Ferraris.
Well, Ferrari know how to get points. We've heard them get second and third in a race or last 2 races. And here they are being lapped twice. What the hell? Anyway.
Okay, keep going. So the Ferraris got lapped.
So Graham Hill was trying to lap the Ferraris.
Yep.
Yeah. But then he overdid it and spun off the circuit to retire.
No.
What
after I gave him a rap, after I talked him up, he goes and does that.
It's so disappointing.
That is.
It would have been
at his home race and everything.
Yeah.
And hang on, what lap did you say? Like, we're close to the end, aren't we? We're like 5 laps.
Yeah, I think it was lap 72 out of 77.
Gosh.
So 5 laps to go, yeah.
Gosh.
So, see, listeners, we don't have an Australia bias here. We're acknowledging Graham Hill had this race in the bag, even though Brabham was right on his tail. So Brabham may have had something up his sleeve, to be honest. But still, Graham Hill shouldn't have even been there.
Nah.
So we're thrilled to have Brabham flying the Aussie flag, but let's face it, Graham was awesome this day.
He was.
So Brabham won, followed by Surtees, Ireland, McLaren, Brooks, and the first Ferrari Von Trips, who was 2 laps behind, and then the rest.
I'm guessing you're not mentioning because they're like, 17 laps behind or something.
Yeah, look, I'm just focusing on the Ferrari.
Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot. Okay, so That puts Jack Brabham in the lead by quite a bit, but he's in the lead now. He's on 32 and Bruce McLaren's on 27. I'll just say those two because it's not worth mentioning poor old Mossy again.
Yeah, it's just a two-way battle, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And then in the Constructors' Championship, we have Cooper Climax on 46 and Lotus Climax on 25, but Ferrari are challenging them on 16.
Okay, they might grab second.
They might grab second. I don't think they can get third. Sorry, first. I don't think they can get first.
No.
But we might leave it there, Louis.
Okay.
And come back, and I think we can finish off 1960 in the next week.
Absolutely. I'm very confident.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Okay,
see you next
bye.
week. Bye.
We have a Patreon.
Yay, we're a professional podcast now. So it means a lot to us if you are able to support the F1 Time Portal podcast.
For a small monthly fee, you not only get ad-free podcast content, you will also receive special episodes that are exclusively uploaded for our Patreon financial supporters.
We promise at least 2 additional exclusive episodes each month aligned to the decade we are up to in the show.
And you will also be able to make suggestions about any special episodes you may want us to research and present. We can't promise that we can do all of them, but we will consider them.
So, if that sounds like an entertainment bargain to you, go and sign up at patreon.com/F1 Time Portal today.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please tell your friends and non-F1 friends alike.
Yeah, and don't forget to rate us 5 stars or whatever highest is available on the podcast platform that you use.
We have a range of social media handles for you to connect with fellow listeners, so look up F1 Time Portal on all the usual platforms.
Or visit us at www.f1timeportal.com or email us at f1timeportal@gmail.com.
We would like to give credit to our primary reference materials, a series of books called Grand Prix by Mike Lang.
We also use many other written and digital references, which are in our show notes.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.